Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk.
Hello. Hello.
So, I wish I could remember the actual graves, but there's lots of old cemeteries in Savannah, and some of them you just walk through to get places, right? And we were looking at them and we were trying to read, I forget what it was. It might have been Essex. So at some period, some historical period, there were like the long F's.
Oh, yeah.
Like a swirl with a bar through it, right? Instead of S's. So we're reading these things and I'm like, why do I feel like I have like a speech impediment? And so then in the middle of a cemetery, we kind of like sat there and started Googling to find it. And in fact, they were S's. But they were using F's at the time. Mm-hmm. And so then like Sierra finds like this old document that's like that where it's the F's instead. And then we were reading it. And then we spent like, you know, I don't know how much time walking around and making all of our S's F's. Let's go to the P today. And
I love it.
It's quite fun because then you start reading them. Like, I was looking at something and I'm like, I swear on all that is holy, both of those words should have S's, right? Like,
yeah,
these don't make any sense. They make no sense. So, yes.
Do you know what I discovered in Florida?
Humidity.
Well, I didn't discover that. Yeah. So I got to have a Publix key lime pie. Mm-hmm. And the crust is fucking magical. And I can't figure out what's different about it.
I saw that.
And everybody's like, it's just a graham cracker crust. And I'm like, it is not. It is better.
It's more better.
It's more better. It's just, people are like, no, seriously, I think it's just one thing is they have to grind the crackers up much finer than I ever have. Not like I make a graham cracker crust every week or anything. But it was also much paler.
Okay.
So I'm going to experiment.
Experiment. Have fun with that.
And I think I'm going to add almonds.
Did you just look up some southern recipes and see if you could find a southern graham cracker crust? Southern key lime pie
I did
recipes?
not. I looked for Publix key lime pie. And all they talk about is the filling.
That's funny.
Okay, don't get me wrong. The filling is delicious. And then Deanna had one that was mango. Same pie crust, but it's a mango instead of key lime, which was also delicious.
My father quite enjoyed key lime pie.
My whole family loves a key lime pie.
Well, you know how I feel about desserts that don't have chocolate.
I do.
Now, the rest of my family enjoys like lemon things, especially like a lemon meringue or lemon bread or lemon. Every time they get it, I just look at them like, "How dare you?
You're so disappointing to me.
How dare you?"
Yesterday we went to a little. Of course, by the time this airs, it won't be yesterday. Thing 2 and I went to a market out in Black Forest. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not a farmer's market yet, but it is all locally produced stuff.
Okay.
And we got some really interesting stuff. I just forgot the whole point. Oh, I got
it. You know, I do it all the time.
But there is it's a company that makes caramels and all things, candies and cookies and jars of caramel sauce, all this. And it's really, really tasty. I want to say it's called Cotton Blossom, which doesn't make any sense to me, but
okay.
So they had these caramel filled cookies. So I got a carrot cake one for Joe and I got a lemon one for me. And I didn't get to eat it yesterday, so. Mm-hmm. But
I made cookies that I really liked. I brought it to one of the critique groups, and it was a brown butter salted caramel snickerdoodles, and the caramels were in the middle of the cookie, and you
Fuck me, that sounds delicious.
It was really good. And no chocolate, but it was really good. Like, whatever sensor in my head goes, must have chocolate, was like, we're okay with this, but I could probably put a ganache on that shit, and it would probably still taste good. But
there is, I don't know if you saw me post it, there's a new food hall. It's not a food hall. It's a place here in Colorado Springs, and I can't remember what it's called. They have like frozen custard, and they've got cold cases where they've got people's green chili, and they have the industrial kitchen. So people who have those small cottage industries can come in and use the approved. So they've got salsas. I think they've got some jellies. They've got the most beautiful cupcakes I've ever seen. Custard, frozen custard. We got some green chili. We got some empanadas. Haven't tasted him yet, but the guy is so nice. He said it was a soft opening. And they're getting more providers in. But he's like, do you want to taste our custard? We just made some frozen custard. We just made new flavors. And Nikki and I are like, well, it would just be polite. So I tried peppermint patty, which was quite tasty. But then he had a salted caramel something. And then there was what's the drink? Horchata? Mm-hmm. He said, do you want to try the horchata flavor?
I enjoy a horchata.
With all the cinnamon in it?
Horchata.
Oh my God. That frozen custard was magnificent. Everything we tasted was delicious. And he hands me, I should write you some, he hands me a handful of coupons for a free scoop. Huh? He goes, come back or give them to your friends or bring your friends.
It's okay. I can't have it. Egg.
And there would be egg and custard.
Yeah. Even Tillamook ice cream has egg, which makes me so sad because, my God, I love Tillamook. It was all I was eating on keto. Was every night I would figure out how many carbs I had left and have that much Rocky Road at the time because I still have almonds too.
Yes.
Ice cream.
They do have a couple of sorbets. Because I think they had a mango sorbet. Nikki's all about mango. I'm
still mad jealous about the local author who moved to Oregon. They've officially moved there now. Yes. And they're posting pictures and I'm like, oh, I love to hate you. So nice. So nice.
And she's such a nice person. I was going to say, she is such a nice person.
She's a sweet person. I can't dislike her.
You can't.
But I can be insanely jealous. But that's okay because I got seafood. Oh, I had so much seafood in Savannah.
I did in Florida every chance I got.
But you have to. Mm-hmm. If you live in Colorado, you have to eat seafood when you're on the coast.
I will say, if you're in Florida and they say grouper, just say yes. Whatever it is, just say yes. You'll have that. Because
I did a low country boil. That was really good.
Oh, I bet.
And I got hush puppy. It was the only place I saw hush puppies for sale. So I don't know where hush puppies usually are. We got them bizarre. In Maryland.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, only place that I saw hush puppies on the menu, and bet your ass, even though I already was going to have this huge boil, I was like, yes, I need a appetizer of hush puppies. Yes. Thank you. And they were worth it.
We had buffalo fried shrimp as an appetizer. Oh, yeah. God damn, they were good. They were huge shrimp and they were cooked perfectly. And
I thought, and I think it must have been maybe like New Orleans that confused. For some reason, I thought Southerners would know spicy. And then I got something spicy and I was all, this is not what I was.
Some of them do, some of them don't.
Yeah, I was just surprised because anything I got that was spicy in quotes was not. Because, I had the barbecue sauce and it was spicy, Cajun something, right? I don't remember. And I was like, this is not even tingly. No, I'm not getting that here. I'm not reading that. But that's okay. The margaritas were good. For no good reason. They were just good. I drank more than normal there, of course, because I could.
The wedding.
And it dulled the pain.
Yes, the wedding we went to, they had a little shuttle bus come to the hotels and pick us up. And it wasn't like it was a heavily traveled road, but it meant nobody had to worry about driving. And also it was in the middle of nowhere. So, I mean, the venue was lovely, but yeah, all we had to do was toddle onto the bus and get there and back again.
Yeah, you still get to go to Hawaii.
I do.
And I'm still going camping in Arizona.
I'll take Hawaii.
I am packing a piece of luggage solely to take a fucking pillow. I can't have a pillow. I have spine issues and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be dying. Also, 3 nights camping and then getting on a plane next to people. I'm like, God, I'm not an oily person, so like that won't be a problem, which is nice. But I'm like, I'm just going to have a sponge bath in the bathroom.
Do you have to take your own camping equipment or is that?
No, they rent camping equipment.
Okay.
So I will have a sleeping pad,
Okay, you will have a pad. Okay.
Yes. So that's good. There will be some, but I've camped with a pad. I camped with an air mattress and I was still crippled. I have serious, they don't know that I have such serious health issues though. So I'm like, this may be the only camping trip I take. And then I'll have to give that up.
Why don't they rent cabins? That's so much more
Well,
civil.
I mean, we're a small company and they're paying for it.
But I mean, we took the Girl Scouts. Trust me, I am frugal McFrugalson. But we went to Jellystone, the Yogi Bear Jellystone up in Estes Park more than once. And those are not, I mean, they're not luxurious usually, but
I don't know. Well, they're pretty chill people and they like to camp, I guess.
Oh my
I don't know.
God.
But I'm going to try it.
I
always
commend
try
you for
everything
that.
one time.
I commend you for that.
So I don't know. I'm hoping I come back and have some really great stories. And I didn't become paralyzed.
I still haven't taken the burlesque fitness class.
Yeah.
And there's another one coming up this month sometime. I need to just do it.
Do it. Just suck it up and go. It'll be fun. I did their yoga booty ballet was something I did for a while. YBB, and they had one that was burlesque.
Nice.
Also, I did the Carmen Electra workouts after I had the kids. And they're striptease one. They're like striptease and pole dance type.
Huh. I did not know she did fitness things.
There's amazing. Oh yeah, she had a series of them that were in. I forget. It's not striptease. One of them is striptease, but I don't think she called them pole dancing. But she had a name that was clear what it was. They were actually really amazing workouts because the women who do that stuff. I mean, if you've ever watched a pole dancer, first of all, that shit takes so much core.
I have watched the world pole dancing championships because it's like. Fucking A. They're just solid.
There's a lot of muscle. Yes.
You
and
have
like the things you're doing with your legs. There's a lot of muscle that comes into play.
But the core strength is phenomenal on those people.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
They were fun workouts. My husband was like, I will get you all three of those. Would you like all three of those? I have already bought them. They are on their way. Of course. All right. Yep. But no, they were good because I was doing Richard Simmons Yoga Booty Ballet, the Wii Fit.
Oh, wow.
And this is before I became to the point I am now. But I was in way good shape after I had the kids, actually. I was in amazing shape. And then it all went downhill. Because I could easily blame it on the having kids. But it wasn't what did it. Damn it.
It does change your body.
Yeah.
And gives you a different set of challenges.
Yes. It didn't help the stuff I already had from serious injuries and serious. I've always had spinal issues. So I have, what is it? The curved spine.
Scoliosis?
What is it? I have scoliosis. And then I fractured my spine when I was like 10 and it was untreated. And then, and then I got into a car accident. So, it all compounds. And then boom, fibro.
We're just going to wrap you in bubble wrap when we take you out.
I would love it. Yeah. No, it really bothered me on the trip because I was like, I'm a strong person and I love to walk places. And I was like, I do not feel strong. I actually waddled in the mornings until the ibuprofen got in. Sierra was like, what are you doing? Like, I can't. Gravity hit when I got out of bed and it's agony.
I remember once going on a camping trip with the sail program that one of the girls was in. And I got up that morning. And I was like, well, someone snuck in and hobbled my feet in the night as I slept.
Yeah, well, it was weird.
It felt like they were just curled up like overcooked shrimp.
Luckily, I am on abundant potassium. But what was weird to me was that it wasn't my normal hurty places.
Oh.
So, like, my knee was fine. My knee is screwed up. There's probably, the doctor's like, it's probably arthritis, but we're not going to do an x-ray. Tell me when it gets worse. And I'm like, it is worse. But anyway, so he thinks that's arthritis. My knee was fine. It didn't hurt the whole trip. It was the most bizarre thing ever. Because I was, I expected that. I expected my back to hurt. That did hurt. It was my hip sockets.
Oh.
I have never had pain in my hip sockets like that. I mean, I did have bursitis in the right one after a car accident, but no, it was completely unexpected. And it was agony in my hip socket. And they're fine now.
I'm so sorry. Do you take collagen?
Mm-hmm.
I just read an interesting article and it said collagen, because it was one of those, does collagen help? And it might have even been in the paper, ask Dr. So-and-so. It was like, there's a lot of supplements that were like, well, maybe it'll help, but there's no proof.
Yeah.
And they were like, there is proof that collagen can help, but you have to take it for maybe 4 to 6 months before you start seeing those results.
Yeah.
But you've been taking it for a long time.
I have. So I went on it because the Cymbalta makes my hair fall out and was making my nails. So my nails were constantly breaking way down into the quick. Every single time. All the time. And since I started going on it, they usually break right above the quick now. So it did strengthen my nails.
Oh, yes.
And then somebody was talking about marine collagen helps with like arthritis and stuff. But I was on, they say, make sure you get the kind that has types 1 and 3 collagen. So if anybody who's ever looking for collagen, you're looking for types 1 and 3 specifically. If it has more, great. But you want 1 and 3, and a lot of them don't have those. Those are the 2 that make the impact that I was trying to get. But mine is sold out. So then I got one that has the first 5 types.
Oh.
And it says it includes marine collagen. But I just started that. So I'm like 2 weeks in or something. So we'll see if that does something for the pain levels and stuff. Because he was like talking about, he has severe arthritis and them just being on, it's just marine collagen supplements he's taking that somebody recommended him. But he's like, oh my God, my pain levels are so much better. I move so much better. And I'm like, yes, please.
It helped my knees, but it took a while.
Yeah.
And I was, all of a sudden, I realized one day, I was like, hey, I haven't been like, fuck, my knees hurt in a while.
Yeah, it's good.
It is a good thing.
It's good stuff.
All right, what are you going to talk about this week?
I'm going to talk, this one's an old familiar one, which I haven't done it before, but it's been in the news for a reason that I'll say at the end. And so I was like, what the hell?
Fair.
Let's do it. Let's look into this and see if there's anything new. And there were actually 2 new things. So I'm doing Madeleine McCann. I'm not doing Madeleine McCann, Andy. Madeleine McCann was born May 12, 2003 in Leicester. I assume that's how it said, England. When she was 3 years old, her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, both physicians, went on vacation with other families to Praia da Luz, Portugal. I'm going to warn people here. Portuguese isn't Spanish. I don't know how to pronounce all the Portuguese. I can understand some words in Portuguese because they're all romance languages, right? But actually, if I watch a Portuguese horror movie and an Italian horror movie, I can understand more Italian. By knowing Spanish. So anyway, what I'm saying is mistakes will be made. Which is sort of my life motto. With Madeleine were her 2-year-old twin brothers. The area they were staying in was called Little Britain due to the high number of Brits who either owned property there or vacationed there. Like, this is where all the Brits went. So if you want to vacation in Portugal, now you know that Praia da Luz is either a place you really want to go or a place you really want to avoid because you're going to Portugal to be around the Portuguese maybe and not the British.
Fair.
The other families were the Paynes, Fiona and David, and Fiona's mom, Diane Webster, the Oldfields, Rachel and Matthew, Jane Tanner, and Russell O'Brien, who was her partner. There were 8 children total among the families there. I didn't feel we needed to know whose was whose, because they don't come into play. The McCanns had a large 2-bedroom ground floor apartment. The person who owned their apartment was actually from Liverpool.
Oh, nice.
And so they kept this vacation home, and then it got managed. Anyway, it was a ground floor apartment. It was 5A. The others were in 5B, 5D, and for some reason they were like, and the others were on the first floor. And I'm like, you just said that the 5A was on the first floor because it was not 5th floor. The 5 did not indicate 5th floor. It was the 5th apartment block. So I don't have the unit number for the other people for some weird reason. 5A's patio doors faced the main portion of the resort and was just over 180 feet from the Tapas restaurant as the crow flies, where the adults dined it every night after putting the kids to bed. This is where they went so that they could be within that short distance. It also had a front door on the opposite side of the building. The 3 McCann children were in a bedroom adjacent to the front door, which had one window with metal shutters that could only be opened and closed from the inside. The McCanns were careful to keep the front door locked, and throughout their dinners, the adults would all take turns walking up to their units to check on the children. Because there's been a lot of accusations, right? Like, well, how dare you leave your children alone in the apartments? And I'll go over more of that. And, you know, on May 3rd, 2007 at 8:30 p.m., an hour and a half after they'd put the kids to bed, so they were fast asleep. These are all little children. The adults made their way down to the Tapas restaurant. They had actually a standing reservation on this book that you could fill out. They'd gone through and filled out that time this table, because that table was arranged in such a way that they could see the back doors of the
nice
5 unit. So that also, I don't think I went into it, but that also kind of came into play in how somebody might know when the adults weren't going to be in the room. Right. Because it was right there on that block. And I didn't see like what day they'd arrived there or anything, but this was into the vacation. They'd already been there a while. I think it was close to when they were leaving, actually. Jerry went up at 9:05 p.m. That's Jerry McCann. Jerry noted that the door, which had been left ajar, was wide open, but the kids were fast asleep in their beds. So he once more pulled it closed to leave it a crack. You know, maybe Madeleine had gotten up to go to the bathroom or something. They didn't know, but, you know, he just put it back there. And it should be noted that though the restaurant was visible from the apartment and vice versa, it was 180 feet away from their table as the crow flies, like I already said, right? They actually had to walk a roundabout way along a street and up and around. And so the actual distance to get from their pre-reserved table to the apartment was actually 295 feet.
Okay.
So there was a greater distance. It wasn't like you could run 180 feet straight. But yeah, it's still...
Yeah.
Also, though the front door and the windows were all locked, the sliding glass door they were entering and exiting through could only be locked from the inside. And again, that's the door they could see. So it was left unlocked during their dinners with the curtains drawn. Jane Tanner, upon going up to check on her apartment at 9:15, so you see they're going up they're staggering, and they're going to their apartments. Now, they're not going to each other's.
Okay.
But that's an adult that's wandering up there that would see something weird, right? So Jane Tanner went up at 9:15. She saw a man walking down the street with a sleeping child in his arms. The man had dark hair, was white and 5'7", and wore a dark jacket and beige pants. The girl had on light pajamas with a floral pattern. Madeleine had been put to bed with light pajamas, but they had Eeyore on them. She thought nothing of it at the time, returned with the news that all was well in her apartment. Matthew Oldfield was the next to check in on apartment 5A at 9:30 p.m. He offered, why don't I stop in when I go just check on my kids? And they were like, great. He said the door was once more wide open when he got up there. He stuck his head in and listened to be sure the kids weren't making any noise, but he did not go in and visually check.
Okay.
So, you know, there's no proof that she was there at that time.
Gotcha. Because how can you tell if there are 2 small children breathing or 3 small children breathing?
Right. There is something that makes me think that she was still there then, but I'll go into that in a moment. At 10 p.m., a couple in a different area of the neighborhood saw a different man walking with a 3 to 4-year-old blonde girl in his arms about 500 yards from the apartment. And what caught their attention is he looked awkward holding her. He didn't look comfortable, and they said he didn't look like a tourist. And I'm like, the thing is, they said something about that in Jane's also, but I think they said he did look like a tourist. And I was like, what makes them look like a tourist if everybody there is British?
I don't know.
They were both white men. So anyway, also at 10 p.m., Kate went to do her own check of the apartment. So we're right here around, and I'm sure there could be stray minutes one way or the other, right?
Right.
She went into the room fully and discovered Madeleine's bed was empty, though her cuddle cat was still there. The bedroom window was also opened. Actually, when she went to push the door open, it actually blew back at her. And she was, why is there a gust of wind coming through here?
Because the window was open.
Because the window was open. Now, I feel like something like that might have happened when Matthew went up there. Had the window been open when he went up there? Would he have seen it? He said when he was asked, he didn't know he hadn't looked at the window. He hadn't noticed. I think he could see the twins from where he went in. It's just that Madeleine's bed was kind of behind the door there.
Right.
But I feel like if that had been open, there were probably street lights or something. You know, there's something that would have indicated that window was open.
Right.
Okay. Police would later say they figured it had been mere moments before Kate got there that Madeleine was removed from the window, jiving with the sighting of a man walking away from the direction of 5A that the unrelated couple had seen. Kate ran from the room screaming for help. Matthew Oldfield asked to have the police called at the reception desk, and the resort instituted a missing child protocol by 10:30 p.m., where staff and any guests who volunteered searched the resort and surrounding areas. They did so until 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And it was a large staff. It was like 30 people.
Like quick, and
that's pretty quick. And they actually had a missing child protocol.
Yeah, I was going to say, and very responsible on their part to already have the protocol in place.
I haven't seen any accusations levied against the resort. Nobody has sued them. You know, there's been nothing like that. They did what they were supposed to do.
Right.
Now, individual employees, that's different.
Okay.
At 11:10, the Garda Nacional Republicana sent 2 officers to help. The station was only 5 miles away, so I'm like, why did it take till 11:10 if Matthew Oldfield was probably asking about what, 10:05, 10:10?
Yeah.
But whatever. And it was 2 officers. That's it. They sent 2 officers out. They helped search until midnight when they called in the criminal police, or the Policia Judiciaria, who arrived around 1 a.m. At 2 a.m., patrol dogs were brought in. At 8 a.m., search and rescue dogs were brought in. All police were called in off of leave and started searching in the morning as well. They searched waterways. There's ruins around there that they searched. Everywhere else that they could think of. There was no sign of her. There was not a bit of her her pajamas. Right. There was nothing. At 10 a.m., this is 12 long years. This is 12 hours after she's been discovered missing. They set up roadblocks. You know how far you could get in 12 hours?
Yeah, you could walk out of town in 12 hours.
No house-to-house searches were conducted. No border or marine officers were even notified. They found out later and went, we could have been...
Yeah.
The room was not properly locked down for the collection of evidence until early morning. At least 20 people had been through it by then. The area outside the window, so many had trampled through it. They couldn't tell if there were footprints there or anything like that. Tourists at the resort weren't questioned. Some of them, seeing it on the news later, would contact police and say, listen, nobody talked to us. Here's something weird we saw or whatever that might help. But by then...
Yeah.
And that's only the ones who happen to see it on the news. So they fucked up. The police fucked up. And interesting to me, it sounds like Italy, where there's kind of like there's the Garda Nacional Republicana sounds like kind of a government police thing. Like Italy also has that. And there's a lot of weird shit that happens between there. Because I remember reading about that and going, my God, I hope I'm never arrested in Italy. This makes me feel the same. But I did not look into this the same, so I could be wrong. But I don't think so. Even worse, Interpol took 5 days to issue a global missing person alert. They could have gone anywhere. Anywhere. In addition, the apartment would be let out to tourists within a few months, and then they wouldn't come back to conduct forensic tests until August 2007.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Portuguese police remained in charge of the investigation. Oh, I will say also that Kate McCann was like, yeah, so they came in, they put up crime scene tape, but they left by 3 a.m. that night and didn't secure the doors or leave anybody standing there to make sure nobody got in. Like, just whatever. Portuguese police remained in charge of the investigation, but a British force was also put together to assist, which included the Leicestershire Police, SOCA, the Serious Organized Crime Agency, CEOP, the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center, and NPIA, the National Police Improvement Agency. I'd like to know what that, like, police improvement? But I didn't look into it. There was a lot of resentment among the Portuguese police, who had more hoops to jump through in order to conduct their investigations due to the structure required. So they had to ask permission of the magistrates before they could take any actions. This was, again, very messed up to me. I'm like...
It seems very backward.
Yes. Also, while the British police had a program called, ready for it, HOLMES, HOLMES 2... God. Come on, we know what that's based on. This stands for the Home Office Large Major Inquiry System, which again, they added large major so they could make it homes. Tell me they did it. Prove it. Portuguese police were still analog, meaning all of their reports and everything was done by hand and stored on paper in boxes.
And this is 2007?
2007.
Jesus.
Yes. The Portuguese at one point accused the British police of acting like a colonial power. Boom. The McCanns brought in publicists. This is the thing that would turn against them in a way, but also keep her at the forefront. This is why we all know who Madeleine McCann is, and so many other children go missing.
And don't.
Who get no attention. But they felt if they could keep Madeleine in the public eye, they might increase the chances of finding her, and financially... they could afford PR.
Yeah.
It certainly did work to keep her on the front page of papers for months and even years. And little Madeleine has been declared the most heavily reported missing person case in modern history by the Daily Telegraph.
Wow.
I imagine they put in modern there so that if somebody went, what about the Lindbergh baby? Then Yeah, they had when police questioned people in the neighborhood, they were told of a lot of suspicious behavior in the months and days leading up to Madeleine's disappearance. It was a hotbed of crime activity. There was a known pedophile ring. I mean, later they would learn that this had been operating there at that time. Oh, my God. Police were also well aware of a series of break-ins, 2 of which had happened in the last 17 days in those units, where the burglars broke in through windows in those surrounding apartments. And it seems as I'm thinking, here's a hot spot for wealthy British tourists and expats. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, there's going to be crime. So they also had a ton of grifters. There were people, so many people reporting. They would go around, they'd ask for money for orphanages. But they were naming cities that had no orphanages. So it was clearly grifting. They would knock on people's doors. They would set up on the street. I'm like, gee, this sounds like a really fun place to vacation.
Yeah.
People in other apartments had seen men walking away from the apartments in a suspicious manner. There were a bunch of examples, so I just summed it up. But there was like one woman looked out and it caught her attention because this man was walking out from a lower apartment below her, but he was walking very stealthily and he got to the fence and he turned around, he looked around and he very carefully closed it with 2 hands. And we're not talking 2 a.m. So you're trying not to wake people up. So suspicious things like that. I just didn't feel like listing a bunch of them.
And some of them could have been anything.
Yes. And there were several men across from 5A at one point, during that week, and even that day, there had been these men sighted, and they thought that they were casing for like a burglary or something like that. And one man had reported finding a well-dressed man on his back balcony. He was like, "What are you doing here?" And the guy said, "Hey, I'm trying to get donations for an orphanage." So he was one of those people, but he was up on his back balcony and he'd come up through like a gated area.
Dude, no, get the fuck out.
And yes, because I don't think I addressed this anywhere. Of course, they considered that Madeleine maybe just walked out on her own, right? She's a little girl. Maybe she woke up. She wanted mommy and daddy. But here's the thing. Outside, she would have had to open the curtains, go out the back door, close the curtains. And there were then steps with a child gate on them that she would have had to get through.
Okay.
So they did search on the basis that perhaps she had just wandered somewhere.
Although by age 5.
3.
Oh, she's 3?
Yeah.
Why did I think she was 5? I don't know. How old were her brothers?
2.
Damn. Fuck.
Oh, because...
That's hard. That's why. Because I didn't realize they were so close in age.
Yeah. They were 1 year and then you have twins. And then you're done.
Okay.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be unusual for a child to be able to open a child lock
No,
they're familiar with.
Because I read that and was like, oh my God, my son could pick a lock when he was 3.
Yeah.
We got so creative to keep him because he loved to just book it. He loved to just walk outside and book it. Mm-hmm. Stand up. He would drag a chair over or whatever and he would unlock the upper latch I had and I'd hear it. We installed an alarm that had a chime when the doors opened because of him. We got more and more intricate child locks because of him. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter. He escaped from the house when I was washing dishes and talking to him. Like, because he carefully and slowly pushed out a screen in the window. It had to have taken so much patience. And I'm talking to him the whole time and he's talking to me. And that little punk ass was outside and he'd hear me call for him. And he'd come to the window and respond to me. Yeah. I heard something and came in and just found dirt all over the floor because my plants had toppled over.
Oh, God.
And so then I just called out to him and waited. And he came up to the window and answered me. And I was like, busted! And then somebody told me, they're like, oh my God, I saw him out there in his little yellow... Because I had the cloth diapers, but they had these covers.
Yeah.
They were called baby somethings. But anyway, and they were like, I saw that, and I just thought I didn't see you. And I'm like, no, he was out there by himself. So, and what I'm telling you, people without children, and especially without escape artists, is anything can happen in a few seconds. No matter how good you think you're doing by doing something and talking to the punks. Other than the McCanns and Matthew Oldfield, which we'll get to in a bit, the original primary suspect, called Narguido in Portuguese, was a man named Robert Murat, who lived with his mom 150 yards from 5A in the same direction Jane Tanner had seen a man walking with a child. Marat approached a journalist from the Sunday Mirror asking questions about the case and offered to be an interpreter because he was British. Rachel Oldfield, Russell O'Brien, and Fiona Payne had all seen Marat hovering around 5A after the disappearance, standing there while the cops do their thing. We've all seen, what do? They return to the scene of the crime, blah, blah, blah. In addition, a nanny that worked for the resort and 2 other tourists reported seeing him around the apartment as well. So this became more problematic when police interviewed him, and he claimed to have been home the entire time, despite multiple witnesses seeing him outside his home. Police focus on Marat was intense, with his entire property being searched. They even drained his pool. I don't know, but they drained his pool to look for.
Can they not?
You not see through it? Yeah. So I was like, all right, seems drastic. One of his friend's cars was set on fire because there ended up being these accusations against 3 of his friends, I think it was. So the car was set on fire and Fala was painted in red on the ground in front of it, and that means speak. Ground penetrating radar and cadaver dogs were brought in. They found nothing. They found 0 evidence on this, guys. So basically, even though returning to the scene of crime is the thing, he just appears to have been nosy. And he said he had a daughter back home who was about her age, and that's why he wanted to help.
And there are some people who are looky-loos, and they can't, they're the Gladys Kravitzes of the world, and yeah, they want to poke, they want to know what's going on.
He was no longer listed as a suspect as of July 21st, 2008. Though Scotland Yard would question him later upon reopening the investigation, he won £600,000 worth of libel lawsuits, and actually it was in a newspaper article that he had brought more individual libel lawsuits against more publications than anybody else ever had. And £600,000? That's pretty good. Several of his friends who had been part of those accusations received £100,000 each.
Wow.
So... And I'm going to say here, because again, I don't think I wrote it down, but it's in my head. That person that Jane saw walking with a child, that was the first one cited, not the couple that saw one at 10 p.m. Police were able to later ascertain that it was a parent who lived in that direction or was a tourist in that direction. Yes, because they had picked up their child from the child care at the hotel, and they were asleep because they did have that's one of the criticisms leveled against the McCanns and their friends is that they had childcare. But they wanted their kids sleeping. It was late. Whatever their rationale was. So anyway, the police the guy said, "Oh, I think I know what I was wearing." And they were able to take a picture of him in that same position and show it to Jane and be like, "Okay, this isn't the guy that took her." And again, that one had floral on the pajamas and not Eeyore. So that removes that one, but it still leaves our 10 p.m. sighting. In 2017, Marat's mother would make a public statement saying she had reported to the cops that she'd seen a woman in a burgundy shirt standing outside the apartment that same day. And then there had been a brown rental car driving incredibly fast the wrong way on that one-way street around the time Madeleine would have been kidnapped. So she had reported to them something else, but they were so fixed on Marat because of his weird behavior. Matthew Oldfield was suspected briefly due to his having volunteered to check on the McCann children because it doesn't seem like anybody else does. And then the whole he did, and I'm like, he man looked, buddy. That's just a guy thing sometimes. They're good. I hear some breaths. What he was checking was that they weren't playing.
Yeah, that they were asleep.
He wasn't checking to make sure they weren't kidnapped, so.
I would have thought that's what I would have done. To me, it seems like, okay, 9:00, you go up and make the rounds. 9:15, you go up and make the rounds. 9:30, you go up and make the rounds. So that one person goes up.
I don't think they did anything unreasonable because the children were sleeping. They stayed for an hour and a half to make sure the kids were well asleep. Now, did any of their kids have no night issues? I don't know. So, but it had gone well for days.
Yeah.
The kids hadn't gotten themselves killed. They could see the only unlocked door, etc.
I mean, it seems like they took a lot of precautions.
They did. So, would I have made the same choices? Probably not, but I'm not a rich doctor from England, so whatever. But their theory was that he had gone in to check, done his normal thing, and handed her out the window to somebody, which does that's reasonable.
Okay, that could have, yes.
Exactly. But this line of inquiry didn't go anywhere, and I never saw them name him Arguido. Okay. I didn't see anything while they looked at him, I don't think they really thought he did it. But here we come. The McCanns were the big arguidos, though, right? Here's the big suspects, the media especially. It was claimed that perhaps an accident had occurred and they had acted like everything was normal and then taken her body somewhere so that they could claim she was kidnapped to cover it up.
What?
Yeah. Some accused them of dosing the children and possibly giving, because they were doctors, but like she was a gynecologist and he was like, anyway, possibly giving Madeleine too much. You know, like I know that when I was on a mom board, Benadryl was heavily used to sedate children. And I wasn't, personally, that was not for me. I wasn't comfortable with that, but a lot of parents were doing it. My kids won't sleep, so I give them Benadryl. I gave them Benadryl when we got onto the airplane, yada, yada, yada. So that is not an uncommon thing, but they were like, no, we weren't dosing the kids. And there was no proof of it. When cadaver dogs were brought in, there were 2. And I actually watched a documentary about this way, way back. It's been too long for me to really remember, but there was inconsistency. One would hit on a certain place, but the other one wouldn't. So there's a lot more in that if anybody wants to watch the documentary that's on there. But anyway, they hit behind the sofa in the living room, and they hit on Madeleine's stuffy cuddle cat. They hit on the trunk of the rental car that the McCanns had gotten, the keys, and the driver's side door. So here we go, right? They're like, okay, she was killed behind the sofa. Then they transport her in the trunk of the car. Her deadness was on their hands when they touched the driver's side door. And it does make sense. It does lay a trail.
Right.
Even when the vehicle was moved to a parking garage, the dogs found it and alerted on it. I feel like that's an important detail. It was thought it had been used to move the body. Right? So channeling Lindy Chamberlain, in case people don't remember, if I say the dingo ate my baby, you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
Kate had been advised not to show emotion in press interviews.
Right.
It would bring pleasure to the kidnappers, they said. Do not cry. Do not show that emotion.
I'm sorry, but I would have said, fuck you. How do I not cry?
Right?
I mean, there are a lot of instances I could not cry through, but if my child was missing, I'm pretty sure
it's hard not to show any emotion,
yeah.
Right? But again, we've gone into also, I lock down.
Yeah.
I will not show emotion from they don't have to tell me not to. I'm like, you don't get to see my grief porn. I'm not providing that for you. So there are different kinds of people, but she was told not to do it. And so of course, the press, they don't care how Jerry's acting. They are attacking Kate.
Yeah.
It's always the fucking mother.
Oh, yes.
And so she was. They attacked her clothing, her hair and makeup choices. They criticized everything about her in the press. She was torn apart. There are anti-McCann websites. You know, like Sandy Hook, where people have hardcore gone over. This is what they've dealt with. Because they did all that PR. She's one of the most famous missing children. So they get a lot of abuse for that. So anyway, Lindy Chamberlain actually made a comment, like a statement, and she said, you apologize for treating me this way, and you're doing it again? You have the audacity to do this again? Yes, every time they will do that. Their ongoing press, including creating a fund and holding events to continue funding the search, because they were doing private detectives and stuff like that for Madeleine, was held as being proof of their guilt. You're just trying to make yourselves look good. Especially bad was when they brought in a South African ex-police officer who had, oh my God, I should have written down it because it was like a matter particulate finder or some bullshit like that. It was that much bullshit. Claimed that if he had something genetic of the person's, he could use GPS to track their body down. And they even brought him in. And I think they consulted a psychic. And they do.
You do everything.
You would criticize them for not doing as much as they could.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was like, oh, obviously this guy's a joke. And therefore they're doing it to cover up. And they're diverting attention and blah, blah, blah. So then, of course, the criticism came for leaving their kids there and dining for hours at the tapas restaurant, yada, yada, yada. Another criticism towards Kate was that, well, why did you leave the twins alone when you ran back toward the restaurant screaming for her? Why didn't you just go out on the balcony and call for them? Why didn't you just use your phone and call the table and tell them? And I was like, her fucking daughter is missing. She's looked around the apartment and not found her. She's panicking. She ran out screaming, the Madeleine's gone, somebody took her. That also came back because she said somebody took her. They were like, well, why'd you assume somebody took her? Did you know? Did you? Wow. Anything she did would have been torn apart.
Yes.
People love to hate a mom. That's just how it is. Mm-hmm. Portuguese police were so pissed off about the British police and all of this, and they felt the PR was going to damage the case, and so they thought that it was also very suspicious the parents brought them in. They actually leaked erroneous information against the McCanns to the media throughout the investigation. It was proven later, helping to turn the press against the McCanns. They felt that the British police were favoring the McCanns and weren't looking into them at all. And come on, that's never true. They're always going to look at the parents in this case. Their extreme privilege angered people. And you know what? I get that. They said if they'd been working class, this never would have happened. They wouldn't have gotten so much attention. You're right, but they paid for that attention. They paid money for that attention. So you're right that they wouldn't have gotten that level, but they made that level happen intentionally. That wasn't the state or the cops or whatever advertising it more than they did another one. That was the parents paying for that level of PR. Through their connections, I get it. Again, I get it. I don't like a rich person. But through their connections, the McCanns even got to meet with the Pope. They were Roman Catholic. They got to fly out and meet with the Pope about the whole thing.
What the fuck was the Pope gonna do?
Pray for her. They're Roman Catholic. Well, of course they think the Pope can do something.
I mean, thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. At the beginning of the investigation, Kate had asked that the twins be tested to see if they'd been drugged because they didn't wake up during the kidnapping or even in the hubbub afterwards.
Oh.
When she ran out screaming, twins didn't wake up. I mean, they're two, but damn.
Yeah.
So she said, what if the kids were sedated? Like, she was actually one of the first to raise that as a possibility. What if the kids were sedated? How did my kids sleep through this?
Yeah.
Because they were under the window. If I remember right, their bed was under that window.
Were they tested?
Not then, but months later, the police didn't do so. Kate actually privately had a company test. But by then it was months later because she had expected the police to do it. And she had her own hair done because they were accusing her of being on drugs. Like, that came as a thing too. Yeah. They even accused these families who would become known mockingly in the press as the Tapas 7. Of being swingers, and they were doing inappropriate. I'm like, they were there, the staff, they were there at the table, whatever. Again, I love to hate a rich person, but come on. At least do it rationally. So anyway, all of the drug tests came back negative. But I'm like, well, how long does sedatives stay in? Like, it was hair tests, I think. Okay. Which are meant, because of course your hair grows out. And so that the whole theory there is that the drug stays in there longer than, say, a blood test where it will be out of your system. But months later, short-haired boys.
Yeah, I was going to say, if their hair is growing fast, it's falling out. And
too late to know.
That's Jesus.
There were a lot of political issues surrounding the investigation. I've already kind of talked about, obviously, the British versus the Portuguese. I wonder how much with the police versus the police versus the police. I don't know. One of the investigators was actually so determined that the McCanns had done it, he quit his job so he could write a book smearing them. It's still available. They've brought libel lawsuits, and they have lost because they have never been proven innocent, and it has been called freedom of speech. Police tried to talk Kate into admitting she'd done it, promising her husband could go home with the kids, and she would only have to serve 2 years if she admitted she'd accidentally murdered her child. Of course, she said, fuck you. Find my child. So,
right off.
It was thought by some that the Tapas 7 were involved in the cover-up of the crime. The swingers. So this again went back to accusations of a cover-up of an accidental death. They were saying that they were going up there and checking just to make it look good, and they all knew that the body had been hidden somewhere and that she was dead. And
no.
Yada, 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 yada. No. There's no way that many parents are like, yes, we will certainly cover for you murdering your 3-year-old child. No. Even the grandma-age lady at least would have been like, fuck that. I don't know them. I'm not friends with them. The rest were friends, right? And in fact, they weren't. I think that the McCanns knew one of the couples well and then had met the others through that couple. So, in terms of evidence, the cadaver dogs hit inconsistently. Like I already kind of mentioned, there was no blood found. There was no physical evidence that and I'm like, really? You think these tourists cleaned the carpeting so well that there was not a spot of blood?
Or on the pavement. outside.
somewhere.
You could clean a carpet. You can't clean pavement.
And I'm like, and how as a tourist do you know such a good place to hide a body that nobody will find it? A local? Sure.
Yeah.
I know plenty of places. But would one of my friends visiting me from another state know where to hide a body? And you still have to get the body there.
No, but you are the first person I would call.
Right.
If I did need to hide a body or create one.
Right. So that's why I'm like,
yeah.
Would they really have hidden her body so well that it still wouldn't be found? The case was closed July 21st, 2008. And that's when I already mentioned Marat was lifted. His status as Arguido was lifted. And so therefore it still was for the McCanns. This meant they weren't considered suspects anymore. But during libel actions later on, the Supreme Court would determine it also didn't mean they were innocent. That is why they lost that libel lawsuit. Okay. And they tried, they after it was found in his favor. And I have to wonder then, since that was being tried in Portugal, is part of the reason that he won because he's Portuguese and they were uppity, rich white people from,
England. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't see that anywhere. That's just me going, did they ever have a chance of winning that one? I don't know. In 2022, a German prosecutor announced publicly that the guilty party was a man named Christian Bruckner, who had then returned to Germany, but who had lived in that area of Portugal in 2007. He was actually living in an RV. The prosecutor, Hans Christian Wolters, said new evidence had been found, though he didn't elucidate on any specifics. And there is a little more that's come out. In 2022, Bruckner was actually in prison in Germany for a rape he'd been convicted of in that area of Portugal of a 76-year-old woman, I believe. I don't know why he's in prison in Germany for it. But if they're also looking into this because they think he's guilty, I guess that's just a thing Germany does. They're like, we will imprison you for something you did in this other country. Right? Because the rape was committed in Portugal and he's in jail in Germany for it.
Okay.
So, because at first I read this and I'm like, Germany? They didn't even factor into this.
Okay. I'm just glad he's in jail.
Yes. I don't know how long, though, because I don't know how long a rape term is there.
Okay.
And he wasn't busted in 2007 for it, I don't think. So it hasn't been that long. He had also been involved in burgling in the area and falsifying passports, and has a record of child abuse and drug trafficking, according to a Yahoo News article. A People article said he was convicted of the sexual abuse of a child in October 1994. It did not go into more detail than that. He has formally now been named Arguido as of April 21st, 2022, which means the Portuguese are also looking into that. But there's nothing more since then, except that in this property he was staying on, they have discovered like this abandoned kind of subterranean basement type thing. They found a child's sand toy bucket in there, but nothing else. So anyway, they're looking into that. And I'm like, that could be a tourist stayed there, or anybody could have used that.
It could have blown in on the wind.
People rent that. Though you can buy super cheap, like $5 bags of sand toys. I saw it at Savannah, and we've done it in Oregon when we took the kids out there. And then you leave it for somebody, and somebody will pick it up,
or you give it to somebody. Hey,
exactly. That's what we did. We were like, hey, do you guys want these?
Like when you're leaving the fair and you have ride tickets left. Do you want these ride tickets?
It has shown, some of the papers did list that he was actually doing odd jobs for the resort when the McCann family was staying there. So again, that comes back to, they had that longstanding reservation. Everybody working there would have had access to that book, and they would have known they wouldn't be in there. So, and it could be some of them did odd jobs in the apartments.
And it could have been very bad luck.
Yes. And there was an astounding list of people who were related to, like, the bus driver for the resort was actually found because they looked into him. They actually pulled all of the phone records from around that area and anything that had gone through their towers and whatnot to look into all those people later. But yes. And they found like this crime ring from the bus driver. So there was, I could have made a list of those and I was like, we don't need it. But that wasn't right. There's a lot of holes to fall down, rabbit holes in this. So there are claims that he killed her, but it actually kidnapped her for that pedophile ring that was operating around there. But again, when the PR hit, because her face was out there, they would not have been able to find buyers for, although I'm like, you're sure you wouldn't have been able to get some higher price buyers in that situation. So they are investigating it as a murder. Everybody has assumed this little girl is dead at this point.
God.
In sad news, this is actually what brought this to my attention, was seeing this. A 21-year-old woman named Julia Vondelt, also called Julia Faustina in most of the articles, and then she had a third name.
I did hear about
Yeah,
this.
from Poland, claimed to be McCann. She had an abusive childhood and was convinced her parents weren't her actual parents and that she had been kidnapped. See, and so she felt that she looked like Madeleine and all of this stuff. And she was on, so she has a bunch of followers on social media. And so a lot of them believe that she was Madeleine. Well, on the 5th of April, 2023, less than a week ago, at the time of this recording, the DNA results came back showing she was fully Polish because there's some woman repping her who's like a private detective, but also a psychic and also something else. I don't remember. And she was like, if she comes back with any British in her at all, any English in this DNA test, because they did 23andMe. They haven't done an official test against the McCanns, as far as I could find.
Because I was like, well, that would be...
She was found to be Polish. Fully Polish.
So, no English.
No British. But the lady had said, when this comes back with some English, we'll start our next steps. So people are putting out, kind of asking, well, are the McCanns going to do an actual full DNA test comparing? And they don't know. They've kind of stayed out of there. They made some minor statements. But
that would be very difficult.
They don't believe it. And yes, it would be very difficult to have this girl. She's getting a lot of press for it, obviously. And so I'd probably do it just to get her to go away.
Yeah.
But the sad thing, I think, is that she's obviously a troubled young woman. She obviously didn't have a good home life. Her parents claim that she stole like her birth certificate and pictures so that she could say that they didn't have any and they wouldn't be able to prove that she'd been there. I don't know. But it does sound like she certainly didn't have a happy home life.
Right.
If she was so convinced that this would be a better life for her if she was these people's kids. So there are no good answers on that situation. Madeleine is still missing. She is also, I think Twitter came to be about a year after she disappeared, and she was one of the biggest trending topics for years on Twitter. And a lot of that was also anti-McCann.
Right.
Propaganda.
Of course.
Yeah. So
a lot of Twitter is anti.
It gave her a whole, like this case, a whole new life because of Twitter. And they said like 10 years later, 2017 or whatever, it was still a trending topic on Twitter. So resources, CNN, Yahoo News, US Sun, which I think is probably, a tabloid, but that was the one that had the information about Faustina, People, and Wikipedia.
Wow. That would just wreck you as a parent.
Right?
Damn.
Especially as a mother who has to inevitably get torn apart and attacked.
Yeah.
Because your clothes were too nice or not nice enough, or your makeup.
And yeah.
You had too much makeup on. You shouldn't be wearing makeup if you're sad because you should be crying.
And if she had been a poor woman, it would have been, well, she's poor, she's a thief, she does drugs. Regardless of what the truth was.
It does not matter who she was or what she was like or if she had money.
Well, I'm going to talk about something that is not fun for the people involved, but it is a little bit lighter.
Okay.
So, I talked about going to Florida. When we got there, so we were going to stay with some friends for a couple of nights. When we first got there, I don't even know if I had a chance to tell you this or not. The day before, or 2 days before we're supposed to go, husband has COVID. And she's like, you're still welcome. My friend is like, you're still welcome to stay here.
I'm like, no.
However, that's complete. And I was like, well, since we're going to a wedding and the bride's grandparents, who are both in their 90s, were there, I was like, I do not want to be labeled a super spreader. So we did see the wife. We had dinner with her. Didn't hug. It was like, sit across the table. But anyway, so we had some time to kill. So I convinced Joe that we need to visit Weeki Wachee Springs to see the mermaids. Because there are two reasons why I say we need to do this. One of them is that I think I have pictures. I don't know if I have the pictures. Somewhere in our family, there are pictures of my grandparents in Florida, I think at Weeki Wachee Springs, to see the mermaids perform. Now, I'll give you a thumbnail history of Weeki Wachee. These springs were discovered. It was like this big grotto, and the guy who owned it put a I don't know if it was glass or plexiglass, on one side of this grotto. So women dressed as mermaids would go in and perform underwater. And then he had a little 40-seat little amphitheater. Then, and I should have written all this down and I did not. I can't remember when it was. NBC bought Weeki Wachee Springs, or bought the grotto anyway. And they built maybe a 200-seat, maybe it's a 400-seat. They redid it. They made it bigger. So it's still the natural grotto. It's this rock and there's it's like a big tank. It's just kind of amazing. And, there's an auditorium and you file in. So the thing is, these women, and there was one man, there are people who for years want to get into this, want to be a Weeki Wachee mermaid. I don't swim that well, and I am not anything close to athletic, so that would not appeal to me. But they have the tubes, the hoses, so they're underwater doing all kinds of, we were talking about pole dancing and core strength. These people have some core strength. They're doing it all.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And they're swimming with those custom tails.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So before the program starts, they have some big screens up top and they're showing, because Weeki Wachee had just celebrated 75 years. So it's 76 years old. So they were showing film clips of how it started and the old, what they used to do? What they used to make them do? They used to have to, and I don't think it was every mermaid, but at least one mermaid per show. One would drink a bottle of Coke underwater and another one would eat a banana. All I could think watching this film was like, what the fuck is in that water? And it's touching the banana and then you have to eat that banana. And I'm like, that is the low woman on the totem pole. It's like, you have pissed someone off. You have to eat the banana this week.
Gross.
Ugh. That completely and totally grossed me out. They don't do that anymore. This season, they're doing a much abbreviated version of The Little Mermaid. So, anyway, so I said, I think this is something my grandparents did, and I think it would be really cool. So the other reason, and then I said, you know what? This seems like a real Serge Storms thing to do. And I know you know who that is.
Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't, Serge A. Storms, is a character in the novels written by Tim Dorsey, who is a Florida author. And I'm just going to give you Wikipedia's one-sentence summary of Serge Storms because I love it. Yes, he has a Wikipedia page.
Oh, well, I'm not surprised at that.
So, the character, not the author. The author does. Okay. Most often described as intense in personality, he is a vagrant with a voracious intellect and an encyclopedic knowledge of Florida history, but prone to periods of focus that lead him to commit brutal and often elaborately planned and staged acts of violence. So, yes. Serge,
no, that doesn't even...
No. Serge and his sidekick Coleman, they're careening across Florida and they're visiting all the old sites. And so as soon as I said, this seems like a Serge Storms thing, he was like, let's do it. By the way, somebody could be making a fucking fortune if they would make available an app or a map, Serge Storms is Florida, and have a trail you could visit.
Do it.
I would have done. No, I'm way too lazy. But someone should, and it's probably Tim Dorsey should do it.
He should do it.
Okay, so anyway, now you know why we went to see the Weeki Wachee Mermaids. And it's really friggin' hard to get good pictures of them in this giant tank. I have some, but when I get back home and I start working on podcast ideas, I think, are there any famous mermaid crimes that I could talk about? And the answer is yes. And it takes place in Florida. Of course. So actually, there was one other story. The first story I found was about a scuba diver off Catalina Island who got into some kind of trouble and was rescued by women dressed as mermaids.
Nice.
Which I thought was hilarious, but that is not my story. There is a bar. It's called the Wreck Bar, and it's at the Bee Ocean Resort in Fort Lauderdale. It's designed, the bar itself, the building is designed to look like the interior of a wrecked Spanish galleon. And the bar is full of aquariums. So it's like you're underwater. And there are large portholes behind the bar. I am gesturing my little heart out for the benefit of Shannon. Where you can see the hotel swimming pool. The show creator, the business name is Medusa. So it's like a combination of Medusa and a siren. I don't get that. Anyway, she brought in the mermaid shows in 2006. So currently, you can take in, they have family-friendly shows on Saturday afternoons and it's Sunday brunch. And Aquaman burlesque shows happen on Thursday nights.
Aww.
And regular aqua burlesque is on Friday and Saturday nights.
That's fun.
Right? So before you buy your tickets to Florida, you need to know that the burlesque shows start at $65 per person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wiki-watchy admission was $13. Anyway. But hats off to these underwater performers who can basically perform either a short play or an entire dance routine underwater, much less with fake seashells hanging off their nipples.
Right? Here's the thing, though.
And makeup.
Boobs are buoyant. So actually, you'd have fabulous boobs under the water. Because they'd just be like, what? Unless there are certain kinds of boobs, then sure, not as flattering. But in general, they'd be like up. You wouldn't need a bra, is what I'm saying, for the burlesque, right? Because,
whoop. But I'm like, I want to know, I don't, but I want to know what kind of makeup they wear. Because they're all, full, especially the burlesque show, they're fully made up.
Waterproof.
And the mermaid tails are much lower cut.
Maybe it's like colored grease paint, like the military grease paint.
Yeah.
We made cold cream that took off military grease paint in chemistry in high school. Because he was ex-Navy, the teacher. He's teaching at the Air Force Academy, by the way.
Do you still have
No,
the
we all
recipe?
but we all just made it. And then he would bring in the grease paint for you to put on and clean it off.
There's some makeup now that's hard to get off.
Yeah.
This is not makeup that I use, but I know people who do. In case Thing 2 is listening. So last year, 2 performers, Whitney Fair and Janelle Smiley, brought charges against Broward County Sheriff's Lieutenant Jeff Mellies for violating their privacy by accessing their personal info on the Driver and Vehicle Information Database, which is called DAVID for short. The database is supposed to be a secure and confidential resource for law enforcement. Mm-hmm. But it gets abused. So records clearly show that Mellies used his computer to access info on Fair and Smiley in 2018, when his wife Mia was performing in the burlesque show with them. Mia started with the show, I believe, in 2015, and she'd kind of risen to having a leadership role. So Mia and Whitney had very different personalities and very different approaches to the mermaid gig. I mean, Whitney's like a yoga instructor and very, very laid back, very kind of a Zen thing. Mia was really into mermaid culture. Before she got into this gig, she did mermaid and pirate cosplay and was really into the life. So they had very different approaches, but for a very long time, they got along well enough. So in July of 2018, Mia was running an informal chat group and Fair left it. She thought it was getting toxic, and I've actually written this. Holy shit, can you believe it? She acted like a fucking adult and left the group. She didn't make a big deal about it. She just left. She said, I think this is getting a little toxic. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. And she left. So tensions between the two of them rose after that. And every tiny thing was blown up into a mountain. The microaggressions continued until it blew up poolside one day. Mia was talking to her coworkers and kept referring to Fair as that asshole. I mean, where she could hear her. And she confronted Mia, and Mia said, "You hate everyone here." And Fair replied, "I hate you because you're a bitch." Wow. So Mia threatened to fire. She was like, "You're done. You are out of here." And Fair cracked on her weight. On Mia's weight. Understand, Mia was not by any stretch of the imagination overweight. She was voluptuous. She had a great figure for doing a mermaid burlesque. But she was always talking about she needed to lose a few pounds.
Uh-huh.
She needed to lose a few pounds.
So she knew it would get to her.
She knew it would get to her. So she said, and she said something like, why don't you get back to me when you lose those few pounds?
Oh.
Yeah. So it sounded like she just reached the edge and poked a very targeted poke. The next day, Anderson, who was the owner of the troupe, fired Mia for an accumulation of problems. Now, Mia says they were all against her. Anderson said in an interview that Mia and her husband were trying to control the show. He kept getting more and more involved, and Mia kept trying to take over more and more. And she really felt like they were trying to take over the show out from under her. So, fired her. That's one way to do that. So the Mellies blamed Smiley and Fair. I'm not even sure why they blamed Smiley, but they did. Fair asserts that they carried out a harassment campaign that lasted 3 years that began as social media attacks, such as, here's something Jeff posted on Facebook. And to think we had all of the mermaids in our home and treated them like family. We never held the fact that Whitney was a convicted felon drug dealer who spent time in prison against her. So the truth is, and Fair was very open about this, when she was 18 years old, she had been caught with approximately a 1/4 ounce of pot in Oklahoma. She was on a road trip with a friend. They got stopped. She said she and her friend spent about a week in jail. Part of the deal was that the felony case would be expunged from her record in 2 years, which would render it invisible to the general public, but not to law enforcement. So the only way you could see it is if you access the system. In November of 2019, you want to talk about spiteful? The Mellies moved into a rental house next door to Fair.
Damn.
I mean, they fucking moved so they could continue to harass her. Several times, Fair's security camera caught Jeff Mellies on her property. In one instance, I saw this footage. He's fully in her yard, has leaned a ladder up against her house. He climbs the ladder and puts tape over the lens of the camera. I'm like, how? That's
pretty dumb
and blatant. Other footage shows Mia standing at the foot of Fair's driveway and screaming, "I hope you fucking die." There was a disagreement. They went back and forth on this. So she put up cameras because she felt threatened. In one case, he was in her yard near her bedroom window. And she said, "What were you doing in my yard by my bedroom window?" And he's like, "You're so fucking ugly. I wouldn't be looking in your bedroom window." And I'm like, that's not how... No. In this case, she had a friend with her. She had put some colored lights up, like around. I don't know the exact placement. They weren't spotlights. They sounded like
kind
Christmas
of Christmassy
lights.
type lights.
Yeah, but she'd put them up around her front door, and they came over. And in this altercation, so her friend is the one filming it. They're screaming at her, "If you want to run a fucking whorehouse, do it somewhere else," because she put up twinkly lights.
Wow.
Yeah.
Y'all moved here. Y'all can move away.
And they said they tried to claim that her cameras were pointed into their backyard. I'll get to that in a minute. Janelle Smiley didn't know where to turn because Jeff Mellies was law enforcement.
Yes. That's
Mia,
always complicated.
That's always complicated. And Mia Mellies was a firefighter.
Ugh.
Which is also a very close-knit group. And there's somebody...
and people have, more than cops, a hard-on for firefighters. They'll defend them till the end of days.
Exactly. Yes. They are held up as heroes. And they often are. But that doesn't mean always.
Mm-hmm.
To add stress, Mia was producing TikTok videos where she talked about placing spells on her enemies. And she proclaimed that she and Jeff were practicing pagans who performed nude rituals in their backyard. She also referred to herself as an initiated first-degree witch. Look, we're back to pagans. But he claimed, her male Mellies claimed that Smiley's cameras were pointed into the backyard, and he said, we often do these rituals sky-clad, and sometimes we're just so caught up in the moment that it's a physical manifestation of our love for each other. And I'm like, so you're fucking in the backyard.
Got it.
Gotcha. But she was like, I can prove that my cameras are not pointed
Right.
the backyard.
The footage clearly shows it's not pointed.
They're pointed at your big fat head climbing a ladder up my... Yeah. So Whitney Fair did eventually go to the police, who issued an order to Jeff Mellies to cease and desist any and all contact with Fair.
Good.
Didn't have anything to do with his wife, but he was not supposed to. Fair's lawyer advised her to submit a public records request to see all searches made by the police on her protected driver's license information. And a quote from the Miami New Times, which is where I got most of this information, federal law forbids public officials from accessing driver's license information for anything but official purposes and provides civil recourse for anyone whose information has been improperly accessed, which means Jeff Mellies was committing a federal offense. Besides Fair and Smiley, he'd also run a search on Marina Anderson, who owned the Mermaid show and was also a performer. In February of 22, the federal lawsuit was filed by Smiley and Fair. While Jeff was under the order not to have any contact, Mia continued to smear both Fair and Smiley online. She painted them as, she just said spewed vileness. And she tried to paint them as anti-law enforcement and anti-American. They want to take your jobs away. I'm like, she has a fucking part-time gig as a mermaid. Oh, and her husband, Male Mellies, would get on and say things like, well, he fucking perjured himself. Because he's like, well, she didn't have a phone, she didn't have an address, and she didn't have a work history. So I felt it was because of my experience, which told me that this was likely indicative, I felt I needed to research her.
Sorry, if he abuses his authority in this way, he's abused it in other ways.
Oh, yes. And she's like, what the fuck? I have a phone. I have a house. I have my own business.
Oh, no, it was the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The outcome of the internal affairs investigation was that Mellies was guilty of abusing the David system and of conduct unbecoming. His punishment was a 5-day suspension without pay. So the case and criminal charges will now be considered by the state's attorney general because it's gotten too big. So lest you think this is an isolated incident, there have been so many misuses and abuses of the David system that the state legislature, and this is Florida, passed a bill to raise the fine for misusing the system from $500 to $2,000 per incident.
Good.
There was a guy who used it to look up addresses for his Christmas cards. How fucking lazy is that? But, there was one case where I can't remember if it was a principal or a superintendent. I think it was a middle school principal, talked the resource officer. So there was a resource officer at the school, somehow conned him into running one on a license plate that was his ex-girlfriend's. It's either his ex-wife or his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend. Like, yeah, that's not illegal. People were doing it. There was a cop who, if a female called in and sounded interesting, he would run it on her. Some really creepy shit.
Yeah.
And I can't make the blanket statement that it's all men doing this, but it's mostly men doing this. Although, to be fair, I believe law enforcement is still predominantly male.
Yeah.
So, I just was like, shit, and the thing that struck me about Smiley was she said before all this happened, she was actually, like I said, she's a yoga instructor. She has something else going on, some other job, and she's kind of shy and quiet. So this mermaid gig was something she did once a week. It got her out of the house. On Saturday night, she would go out, woohoo, do this little mermaid thing. She would have interaction with the customers and with her coworkers, and she loved that. And not only did this blow up in her face, but they fucking followed her and moved in rented the house next door.
Yeah, that's insanely hateful to go that far.
Yeah. So my sources on this were Wikipedia, the Miami New Times, and the Rec Bar's website. I will post some good pictures of them in costume.
Okay.
So I'm like, how are you keeping that up? And then I'm like, I know it's stretchy material. It's not gonna, but I'm like, wow, that's a lot of scaping. Yeah, let's say I'm not a mermaid because I'm not very athletic and I don't think I would be a very good swimmer. It's not because I'm too lazy to do all that landscaping.
That's the reason. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. And check us out at buymeacoffee.com/mmmayhem.
And we will talk to you next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.